Support me on Ko-fi to see my videos early. The link is in the description or on my channel. So, if we're going to get bots, we're going to need to get titanium. And if we're going to get titanium, we're going to need to go to other islands. Something which will be incredibly useful when we get to one is a seismic scanner, which I'm researching here whilst I further exploit this iron patch. Think of it as a super radar, able to scan a massive area but with two major downsides to balance that. It can only scan land, not ocean, and it outputs 150 pollution a minute, which is the equivalent of 15 electric miners. The general idea is that with just one of these, we can hop around islands, place it down, leave it until it scans a massive area, and then move it to a new area until we've mapped out all of the major land masses around us. With this information, we will be able to plan our future logistical empire. You've just watched me improve our waning iron production, and now with the lack of power, I need to expand the power plant. I was beginning to feel, at this point, a sense that our base was unsustainable. In vanilla, there is almost always another nearby patch to happily expand to, but in this mod, there is a massive amount of exploration, beta clearing, and infrastructure between us and the next resource patch. We have an extra iron patch on the island, but if any other resources run out, it could cause a massive problem. So, we need to go beyond this island as soon as possible, and my key to that is the seismic scanner. First things first, however, it needs electric engines to craft, so we need to set up advanced oil processing, which, coincidentally, not so coincidentally, aligns perfectly with my goal of getting construction bots. Of course, behind every advanced oil processing setup is the milk toast cracking setup, which you hate building, but obviously must build, because you hate manually clearing fluid tanks more. With the heavy oil though, we of course make lubricant and then electric engines, and with 10 of those, along with some explosives and some lead and red circuits, we have our seismic scanner. With it, some power production, miners, turrets, and a lot of containers, we set off westwards. We obviously want to map the island, but also whilst we're there, I want to start mining titanium to bring back for bots, as the best time to start that is now. And after heading west for a while, we find land. Now, to find a good site for the scanner. As you can see, when I try to place it down here, it needs to be more than 16 tiles from water, for, I assume, technical reasons. We put a load of coal in the power plant, and in this chest, and then set up some defences for the scanner, as a building this polluting is like a big biter magnet. Whilst we wait for it to find some titanium, I head out to sea to set up blueprints for waterways. It's nothing too exciting, as it is after all basically just trains, but on the water, but this is what I end up with. And, oh wow, look at how much that's uncovered. Here's the tiny little titanium patch we want. I say tiny, but as I found more later on, this actually seems like quite big as far as they go, especially for one so close to spawn. And here it is in the flesh. We set up our power, some turrets, and then miners. Why does it have pipes on it? That's right, turns out you need lubricant to mine this stuff. I finished building it regardless, and after a few deep breaths, head back to base to get some barrels of lubricant. I return with the lube and set up an assembler to empty the barrels straight into the miners. Except first, I accidentally set it to nuclear waste emptying, because they look exactly the same. Once I've corrected that, we have a while to wait whilst titanium accumulates. But I didn't just bring barrels with me, I also came with weapons. I try very ineffectually to attack this nest with grenades, before just falling back on the old tried and tested turret creep. I wanted to avoid it, because I hate it, but I suppose until I research some more effective tools, it's all I've got. After clearing 3 nests, I look on my map and find that the seismic scanner has actually reached its maximum range. So I go and pick it up and move it down south so we can scan the rest of the island. I'm going to be real, it isn't looking too good so far. Very few resources and absolutely no iron that I know of. This one might not be worth colonising, but we're going to finish exploring it either way. After all, resources are resources, and worst case, we can use it as factory space later. At this point, I'm still not 100% about whether I'm going to use this island or not, so I go back to keep clearing nests, which goes well. Well, I guess I'm starting my pistol collection now. I considered loading a save like a coward, but no. I've made my bed, and I must now lie in it. I used the opportunity to grab some more resources from my base before heading out in a new boat to reclaim my corpse. I again returned to my old friend the turret creep to eviscerate the nest, but I start researching rocketry, so in future I don't need to stoop to such lows. Now, with the more sophisticated way of war, the missile, I lay down a defensive line at a distance and, I believe the technical term is, go ham. That is until I run out of rockets, at which point I figure a bit of turret creep won't hurt and I am rightly smited down for my sins. Okay, lesson learned. I get the materials for over 100 rockets and set off to collect my corpse yet again. Since I'm handcrafting the rockets like a mutant instead of automating them at base, they're still kind of limited, so I only use them to kill worms, using turrets to melt the leftover nests. A look at the map reveals that this island isn't getting any better, however, so I don't think it's worth even finishing clearing them out. FreightForwarding default settings has expansion off, so I can happily leave these nests here, knowing they will not expand into the space I just cleared. So, with our seismic scanner, we set off to lands unknown. I eventually find this promising landmass, so I shut down the scanner and leave it to do its thing. I go back to my titanium miners, and over the last 50 minutes they have given me 20 containers of titanium ore, which will certainly fulfill our needs. The first thing we do is get that titanium dumped into furnaces, whilst we set up the rest of the materials we need for bots. One interesting thing of note is that batteries require lead instead of iron, and like, duh, makes sense. Anyway, soon enough we have our armour filled up with equipment and 20 construction bots, ready to go and explore that island and... oh my god, it's tiny. Time to go find another one, I suppose. I passed this new resource node out in the ocean, called a seamount. If we put a dredging platform on it, we could dredge nodules out of the mountain, which act as an infinite source of iron and copper. Needless to say, this is a high priority on the to-do list. I once again find land. This time, it looks quite a bit larger, so I put down my scanner. Surely, this will be the one. I pass time clearing some nests, but seeing the sea so close on the right there, set off my spidey sense about this being another tiny island, so I decide to go explore in my car and find out for sure. Thankfully, it seems to me that there is more on the right here, so I find a new place for the scanner and head home. Checking the map on the way back, I find that it has already found iron, which makes it automatically worth it, as the other island we explored had no iron at all. For a mod essentially entirely about logistics, I haven't really built a lot of logistical infrastructure. A little railway, a small waterway, pathetic. I get both train and boat signals set up, and I think it's about time we look at getting some real logistics put together. Now, if you cast your mind back to last episode, you will remember me telling you that the big trains are electric. You might reasonably expect that they charge at train stations, or we use electrified railways, or whatever, but no, that would be too easy. What we actually need to do is build batteries, charge them up, and put them in trains, and then the trains will spit out the dead batteries which we can recharge. Sounds good, right? Well, when charging a battery, it has a 2% chance to destroy it, so we need to be constantly producing a small trickle of batteries to keep up with that. This, along with the 1% chance for a container to break upon emptying it, means I need to not only be constantly producing containers and batteries, but also distributing them. Needless to say, using vanilla trains, this would be the painfulest of all the pains in the asses ever invented. But we have options. Any of you description readers out there may recall seeing the cybersyn mod listed, which provides new functionality for trains, which is useful on a good day, but in this case, completely saves me from an insanity spiral trying to get this all to work. The idea is simple. Trains no longer have a single assigned route that they repeat ad infinitum, but instead sit in a depot and are assigned jobs like how logistics bots might be. You might even call it a logistic train system, except this has way better performance. So we can build a central depot where we refuel trains and provide them with containers instead of having to deliver them to every single train station in the network. You can see here the little setup I snaked into the gap between batteries and red circuits. At this point, I was worried about running out of power, but as you will see, I am going to rapidly approach the end of useful technology for the time being, so we will soon stop researching for a while. So much of our power is committed to research that when it stops, I find that the power problem solves itself. Anyway, here's what that depot is going to look like. It has space for 10 trains, which might seem like a tiny amount, but with the throughput of trains in this mod, I think it will be able to handle for now. In worst case, I can just expand it rightward as needed. To turn batteries into charged batteries, we use battery chargers. As I said earlier, they have a 2% chance to destroy the battery on use, but it's not particularly noticeable unless you're paying attention or using a closed loop. Also, as you can see here, we have the same silly design for trains with the carriage right at the front, which, although ugly and stupid, works like a charm. This is my ultimate design for the depots. One lane brings in charged batteries, one lane takes out the dead batteries, and one lane brings in containers. It's worth noting that I limited the number of containers which can be inserted into the trains to 30, so that there's still space to fit the empty containers being picked up from receiving stations. What I really want to do now is move over all of my existing infrastructure to make use of this new, better system. So I head out in my brand spanking new vehicle, a hovercraft. Hovercrafts are kind of cracked, able to travel on both land and water and do it incredibly quickly. Their only downside is that they have zero storage space. That's right, somehow in this vehicle, which is as big as a car, there's not a single nook or cranny with which an item can be stored. Bullshit. I build rails down to the south here and start clearing out the trees. I want this to be my port area, where resources from other islands are moved from cargo ships onto the local train network. I end up building this, which has space for 10 train stations. Probably more than I need, but it's better to have them and not need them than need them and not have them. My end goal for this episode is to set up dredging, which, as I mentioned earlier, will give me a steady infinite source of resources by mining a seafloor mountain. To set up a dredging platform, I am going to need reinforced concrete, so I get that set up now, which also gives us regular concrete we can use for underwater pipes. Back to my port, I start designing where the boats will park. When building this first one, it was initially intended to be for cargo, but I later decided this is where the oil is going to come in. Anyway, all of this moving my base over to a new system is going to take a very long time, so I decided to do it all off camera, because it's a lot of the same, and I don't have enough space on my computer to be wasting it on a big nothing burger. After almost 3 hours, here's what I ended up with. Oil comes in from a proper seaway into port, where we have an oil train which can take it wherever it needs to go. We have this train yard to the left of the ore patches, which drops off all the resources the base might need, which we already have lead and iron hooked up to. We have that iron ore mine hooked up, as well as a new station for the lead, both using our new train system. All 3 oil patches are now connected up to the boats, and as I said earlier, it uses proper waterways to get into our big port. That island to the northeast ended up being quite fruitful, containing 2 massive iron patches and a lead patch, as well as a few other small resources. All in all, I'm pretty happy with this. When starting this mod, this was the kind of thing I was expecting. Anyway, it's about time we get around to my big goal for this episode, getting dredging set up. You might remember that I found a seamount to the southeast, so I'm going to start building out my waterway network in that direction. With my hovercraft, travelling across water is an absolute breeze, and on our way, we find a new island. I quickly go grab my scanner and bring it over, before continuing with the waterways. After just one stop, to go grab more signals, we make it to the seamount and place down the dredging platform. This is one of my favourite parts of the mod so far, as you can't expand the platform, so you need to find a way to process and export the nodules, as well as powering the whole process on this tiny little platform. With the dredger itself taking 800 kilowatts, and us needing 4 chemical plants to fully use up its production, powering it is a harder job than you might expect. My first idea is to use steam power and ship in solid fuel, but you can't place water pumps on the platform edge for some reason, so that won't work. I take it back to the drawing board and go grab solar panels and accumulators, as well as deciding to not process the nodules on site. However, I quickly discover that the nodules only stack up to 1 and can't be containerized, which it's not at all worth moving them. I returned to my original plan of processing the nodules on the platform, so I used the right side for solar panels and the left side for chemical plants to process the materials. When processing nodules, some of them are spat back out, which we can use priority splitters to send back into the input. All the rest of the materials will be loaded onto the cargo ship mixed, and sent back to the shore to be sorted and containerized there. With it now mostly set up, we need to head back to shore to set up a tanker for sulfuric acid, which is required for nodule processing. I decide to set up our port for dredging over in this bay next to our big port. We need a place for the tanker to pick up sulfuric acid, and another place for the cargo ships to drop off the produced materials. Next to my train depot, I set up a sulfuric acid station, which will take acid we're already producing for batteries to be collected by a train to provide for the tanker. With our sulfuric acid tanker set up, and after making its 8 whole minute journey out to the dredging platform, we're finally processing nodules. Now, all I need to do is send this cargo ship out to collect the resources and bring them back. What it lacks in speed, it makes up for in cargo, as it can store 20 train wagons worth of material. My stupid sulfuric acid ship wasn't fully fueled when it set off, and ended up stuck here, right next to its destination. I fuel it up and changed its condition for setting off to 5 seconds of inactivity, so it can't leave until its fuel is full. In the background here, I finished setting up the train stops for the rest of the core resources, as well as adding the resources from dredging into the train system. Seems all good, right? Well, no. You see, these solar panels aren't keeping up with the power demands of dredging. We need to rethink our system. I bring over efficiency modules, but they can't be put into the dredging platform, and their savings on the chemical plants aren't quite enough to get us in the green power-wise. If only we had some sort of portable energy storage medium with which we could transfer power from our base directly to the platform. Oh yeah, we do. New plan. You see, this mod gives us access to drones, which can be used to transfer small amounts of resources vast distances. It is quite expensive, but nothing our base can't handle. The idea is simple. We build drones in our main base, use them to launch charged batteries and drones to the dredging platform, discharge the batteries to provide power to the platform, and then use the drones we sent over to launch the discharged batteries back. Rinse, repeat, profit. Even better, the drone launch platforms function as buffer chests, so we can feed them using the bot network. We set up 2 1% charged batteries and 1% drones, and then at the dredging platform, we build a launch pad as well as 2 receptacles. Instantly, 2 packages of drones are sent our way, as you can see on the map here. I then build these 2 battery dischargers and a receptacle to receive the charged batteries, and we're ready to see if this thing works. Anyway, with the dredging platform finished, and my patience drawing to a whimpering end, I think it's about time we put this episode to bed. Thank you for watching, and special thanks to my Ko-Fi supporters, Zakakaquack, R1 Smells, Dick Dastardly Enthusiast, Scovey, Mockafet, Thomas, Shrunk Hoovy, Dr. Duck Lumps, Preston Cole, Das Tom, Bartio, Leo, Stocky, and Nathan14321.